What's up, fellas? In the second video today, I want to talk about Kevin Durant because I actually weirdly don't think that the season that he's having to this point is getting as much attention as it should. I feel like we're talking about it, but the historical nature of how good Kevin Durant has been, given the context of his situation coming into the season, is something that I feel like needs to be talked about a little bit more, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. But quickly, before we get started, what's up? My name is Tucker. If you guys are new here, I upload NBA content on this channel twice a day, every single day. So if you're looking for the most consistent NBA content on YouTube, then you found it. Consider subscribing to the channel. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well if you're enjoying the content, and you can check me out at various socials at the bottom of the screen and a link tree down in the description below. With all those things said, let's talk about Kevin Durant. So of course, the context that I'm speaking about here is the fact that we haven't seen Kevin Durant play basketball in a long time coming into this season after an Achilles injury. That was such an unfortunate situation. I think you can make an argument that he and the Warriors would have another NBA title to their name had Kevin Durant never torn his Achilles. And the history is, I'm sure is no news to you guys, of Achilles injuries in the NBA is not pretty. Basically, best case scenario, you come back about 80% of the player that you were pre-injury. And really the only historical exception to this is Dominique Wilkins. And for the most part, these players that do suffer this injury are like fringe starter guys or like role players. And then when they come back, they're basically all just like kind of rotation players. They're never the same athletically, and statistically there's significant decreases across the board as well, again with the exception being Dominique Wilkins. So when Kevin Durant goes down with this injury, there were legitimate questions being asked, around his free agency, because it happened so close to it. It was like we were going into this, this 2019 free agency situation where there was anticipation around Kevin Durant possibly leaving Golden State. I was convinced by the time the postseason rolled around that he was going to leave and he was going to go somewhere, whether it be Brooklyn or New York. And, we were all kind of anticipating that. And then he gets hurt a little bit in the playoffs and then he tears his Achilles. And not only is the conversation around did the Warriors potentially do something wrong here and try to force him to come back way sooner than he should have, but also how does this impact his free agency? This has never happened before. We've never had a player that's a legitimate MVP candidate year after year after year going into free agency in which he can earn a max contract, suffer an injury as significant as an Achilles tear. And there were legitimate questions about not only should teams sign Kevin Durant to a max contract or offer it to him, but also would it be a smart investment to do so? This is Kevin Durant that we're talking about. Like, that's how significant an Achilles injury is, that someone on the level of Kevin Durant, that there would be questions about offering a max contract, which makes total sense, by the way. Like, the fact that he has played so well this season does not wash away that initial argument of does it make sense to pay $35+ million to a guy that will not play basketball in the first full season of that contract? And once he does return to play, you have no idea how good he's going to be. And historical precedent says that with one exception, he's going to be about 80 to 85% of what he was pre-injury, which makes the season that he's having to this point all the more incredible. When you watch Kevin Durant play, if someone had told you, there was no significant injury in his past, just erase that 2019 Achilles injury from your memory, there would be no reason to believe that anything different had happened to Kevin Durant. His shot looks great. Athletically, he looks fine. All the stuff that he kind of learned in Golden State in terms of how to be a better defender and a better passer, all those things have translated to the point where Kevin Durant is an MVP candidate. Kevin Durant is one of the best players in the league, and that was always the argument for not worrying about the Achilles injury. And that speaks not only to, the rehab process and the advancement of modern medicine and how, good of a job Kevin Durant as well as the trainers did in rehabbing from this injury, but it also speaks to how incredible of a player Durant is and how significant this injury is. That not only is Kevin Durant such a great player that he can come back from this and be this good, but also that it was even a question in the first place is kind of an incredible thing to wrap your mind around. And now we've gotten to this point where there's not even a question about it. There's no, I don't know if KD is going to be the same. I don't know if he's ever going to look the same. And those, again, were all legitimate questions. Now, coming into this season, I kind of felt like if there was a case to be made for anyone in the history of the league that has ever suffered this injury to come back and be 95 to 98% of what they were pre-injury, it was Kevin Durant, because he has a size advantage over every single player that's ever guarded him in the history of the league. He is one of the most skilled offensive players we've ever seen, and he's not someone that necessarily relies on athleticism. He's obviously an incredible athlete in terms of his quickness and his body control at his size, but he wasn't ever like a speed and quickness guy to get to the rim. He was never someone that was jumping over people. His size and his quickness and athleticism, all those things blended together in an incredible way, but not necessarily in a way that would be negatively impacted hugely by an Achilles injury. And in contrast to someone that had also suffered the same injury like John Wall, he's one of the best shooters at his position at his size that the league has ever seen. So even if his athleticism was taken away by a certain percentage, he still should be able to be an incredibly effective player. But even I had significant questions about not signing Kevin Durant in the first place. I always wanted the Nets to sign Kevin Durant, and every team in the league, I would imagine, if Kevin Durant said, hey, I want to sign here, they would have offered him the max. But I did have questions about where he would be at as it relates to like being like championship level form, MVP caliber form. I didn't know if we were ever going to see that from Kevin Durant. And the fact that we have makes this truly a historic season and a historic accomplishment, even just to this point, even not accounting for anything that may happen in the future for Kevin Durant for the Brooklyn Nets. It's honestly unfathomable how good he's been, not just because of the Achilles tear, but because of the context in which it happened. It happened late in the 2019 season, of course, as they were potentially, going towards winning a title. It happened to a player that has been in the league for a very, very long time, was a one-and-done player coming out of Texas who has a lot of NBA minutes on his body. It's someone that has suffered other lower body injuries in the past, whether it be a foot injury or otherwise, and it's someone that, by the time he returned, would be in his early 30s. And so all of those were red flags. If you're looking at like not just the player that Kevin Durant is, but if you're just looking at like the medical aspect of this, by which I am no expert, but just the obvious signs here, if you're looking at red flags, like they were all there. Someone, in their early 30s, someone that has had a lot of wear and tear in their body, someone that, doesn't necessarily rely on athleticism, but athleticism is part of what makes Kevin Durant such a special player. All those things were concerns, and he's overcome every single one of them in a way that is truly, truly incredible. And I think only adds to the evolution of Kevin Durant's game. From someone in Oklahoma City that was arguably the best pure scorer the league has ever seen. I'm not going to make that argument right now, but I think if you're having a conversation and you're extending that list to about 5 players, Kevin Durant is on that list. And someone that, not necessarily didn't impact the game in other ways, but primarily was such a prolific scorer. And then goes from that player in Oklahoma City, rounds into MVP form, but then goes to Golden State, and his scoring in such an odd way was almost a luxury and almost redundant, to the point where he, whether he wanted to or not, ended up, rounding out other parts of his game, passing, defensively, and apparently was one of the reasons why he wanted to go to Golden State in the first place was he didn't want to be just an isolation guy. He wanted to learn how to play basketball in other ways, and showed marked improvements as a passer and as a defender, both of which, passing more so than defense, have translated now to his time in Brooklyn to this point now where post-injury, yes, there's a little bit less athleticism, but no more than you would expect from a player that is now, in their early 30s and has had as much wear and tear on their body as Kevin Durant has had throughout his career. But he's now this player that when driving to the rim, he sees those passing lanes and he, gets in passing lanes defensively and can protect the rim a little bit and is truly, everything we ever wanted out of a modern day Kevin Durant in terms of the positional versatility, both offensively and defensively. It's all there. And the fact that it's all there and it's all come together and he has evolved to that point all the way up to this point, and even now post-injury, is truly, truly historic. And I think like when we look back on the career of Kevin Durant, this is going to be the moment that people are really going to say, man, like this might be the crowning achievement of Kevin Durant's career, not from like an accomplishment standpoint. Of course, whatever titles he won in Golden State and will potentially win throughout the rest of his career will of course be incredible accomplishments. But if you're looking at the biggest obstacle that Kevin Durant overcame in his career, I think this has to be at the top of the list, given his age, given the wear and tear on his body, given how devastating this injury has been to literally every single player that has ever suffered it, with the exception of one, and now two, it's honestly mind-boggling. And it's incredible that not only has he overcome it, but he's overcome it to the point where when you're watching him play, it doesn't even come to your mind that this is someone that tore their Achilles in the 2019 postseason. So all those things come together to create such a historic sequence here for Kevin Durant, and I can only hope, all the best for him moving forward and all the health moving forward for him as well, because it has been nothing short of a historic accomplishment to this point this season for Kevin Durant of the Brooklyn Nets. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I will see you all next time.